Okay. Recording has started. Well, thank you all for attending. Welcome you all to another AWS Tech webinar, where we are going to today, just a second, where we're going today to go into the area of assessment, modernize, migrate your workload into AWS. We are happy to have with us some specialists from AWS and from the TD SYNNEX cloud team. And we will go through, as the agenda shows, Windows on AWS, AWS overview, OLA technical presentation, how Tech Data can deliver the OLA, and how Tech Data can deliver and support you with a map and migration process. So with that, I would like to give the word to Alessandro. And I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Hans. I think I cannot share my slide deck. So if you can enable this, that would be great.
You just click share on the top.
It's disabled.
It says only meeting organizer and presenters can share.
Okay, just a second. That was. Okay, can you share it?
Not yet.
Excuse me, Hans, I see that I can enable Alessandro as a presenter. Let me try. Okay, now you should be able.
Yes, thank you. Okay, let me share my screen. I hope you can see it okay.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Alessandro. I'm the EMEA DST specialist. So I'm specialized on Microsoft workloads on AWS. And today I want to talk to you about the Windows on AWS value proposition. And first, I want to talk about why customers choose AWS for Microsoft workloads. Well, many people don't know that we have 2 times the number of Windows servers hosted in the cloud compared to all the other cloud providers. Now, we started 14 years ago to host Windows and SQL on AWS. And here you can see some other things that we have. We don't have much time, so I want to go straight to the point. We have 200 services now available on the AWS cloud, so there's a lot of opportunity to do some more upselling starting from our customer journey. And we improve our TCO by 80 times since we started this journey to make our cloud publicly available to customers. Now, talking about Microsoft workloads on AWS, these are the main pillars. Now, the breadth and depth, this is the first one. So AWS supports the full Windows stack. So that includes Active Directory, .NET, SQL, Visual Studio. We have capabilities like the only fully managed file system server, which is called Windows FSX for Windows File Server, hosted on AWS. We have dedicated hosts, and we also have a developer toolkit, which is available for Visual Studio to basically host legacy applications and modernizing them to AWS. Now, the reliability and security, we have studies that show that when we run SQL on AWS versus Azure, we have 2-3 times more performance in terms of transactions per minute, and we also have price reduction 2 or 3 times that. So it's important to know, and it's important you understand what you can tell your customers. We also have the possibility to innovate, and our experience about hosting Microsoft workloads and other workloads say so. For example, when Microsoft announced the availability of SQL Server 2019, during the same week, we announced the availability of AWS fully capable of hosting SQL Server 2019 in AWS in the cloud. So we're trying to keep up of everything that is happening in the Microsoft world, including the licensing piece, which is it's probably the most one of the most complicated piece that is about enterprise agreements and SPLAs. So we have a lot of licensing options here. Now, if I talk about the or if we look at the all the services that we started supporting since 2008, you can see the hyperbole going up. So we have services available for Windows Server and Windows EC2, for SQL, for .NET, and for app modernization in general. And you can see all the services here that have been supported over time. So basically, I think it's a good starting point because everybody understands Windows, and Windows is everywhere. Windows and SQL mostly. So it's a good starting point when you start the journey with AWS to talk about Windows on AWS. Now, just a little bit of information. AWS has been recognized as a cloud leader for the 12th consecutive year. And this is the Magic Quadrant from Gartner, which is dated June of this year. But also, we've been recognized as a cloud database leader in the new Magic Quadrant end of last year. So these are useful information that customers need to know. Because it's important to realize that AWS has been evolving over time, adding more services, adding more security compliances, and still continuing to reduce the prices that we have available for your customers, basically. Now, in terms of reliability and security, we are announcing more and more regions. We have a new one that has been announced recently in Switzerland, and we continue to build regions and availability zones. Now, the difference between what the other cloud providers do and what we do is this. Basically, when we build, when we select like a place where we want to put our region, we try to find a place which is very large, and we start to build data centers. Now, our region comprises basically multiple data centers, multiple buildings. And so that's why we call it availability zones. Now, for each building, they are close enough to reduce the latency, but far enough so they can be independent, so to say. So basically, we try to have the data centers in the same region as much as independent as possible. So when it comes to electricity, when it comes to networking, so everything that might happen to a data center, it won't affect the others. So the region will continue to stay up anyway. So this is something that has been, Gartner said this is the recommended approach for all the hyperscalers to have the region built in this way. And now the other cloud providers, they start to follow the same rule, but it's going to take a lot of years. Now, talking about the market opportunity for Windows. Now, what we know is that 70% of enterprise applications are Windows-based. And out of that, 82% are still on-premise. And this is what IDC says about that. Now, if you include the fact that 50% of the customers planned or are planning to move to the cloud in the next 2 years, you can see there is a huge opportunity that we have from here in the next 2 years to migrate their Microsoft workloads to AWS. Now, the total addressable market for Windows is $14 billion. And what IDC said in a recent study is that this will grow to $33 billion by 2025. That's a study that IDC has done at the end of 2021. So the opportunity is huge, really huge. Now, talking about SQL Server, now SQL Server 2012 reached the end of support in July this year. That means no security updates, no compliance. So a lot of issues for customers, even if they are like small customers, SMB customers, it doesn't matter. Now, this is a great opportunity to start talking to your customers about this. So what about when your enterprise agreement will end, when it's going to be expiring, for example? And then you can look at the other version, like, do you have other versions of SQL Server, like SQL Server 2008 R2 or just SQL 2008? And the same discussion, you can plug Windows Server, because Windows Server 2008 and R2 already reached the end of support in 2020. And Windows Server 2012 will reach the end of support in October next year. So that's a good starting point for you to talk with your customers and talk about what are your main workloads and what are the main versions of Windows and SQL that you have at the moment. So we can talk about, okay, when does your enterprise agreement end? And then we can think about, okay, so there's an opportunity to migrate your workloads to AWS using the latest version of Windows, but hosted on AWS, which will help you to save a lot of money thanks to our different licensing options. Now, talking about this $14 billion that I was telling you about before, what we see the most opportunities are basically in FSI, so financial services and insurance companies, retail, and manufacturing. These are the three main industries where we see the most opportunities. Now, if you look at this 14 billion by region, then you can see the breakdown. You can see how much is the total addressable market for Windows and SQL in the different areas of the EMEA region. Now, talking about the customer journey, now this is a very important thing for AWS. So we always start with the assessment phase. So we start with what we call an OLA, optimization and licensing assessment. So you might be able to do a cloud assessment using a tool that you normally know how to use it. But the OLA comprises another piece, which is the Microsoft licensing. This is for us, this is very important because we know that if we start talking about the OLA and we offer this as a free assessment for your customers, and you can rely on Tech Data or TD SYNNEX to help you deliver these OLAs. But basically, if you add the Microsoft licensing piece, then you can present the outcome to your customer and say, okay, if you move these workloads to, I don't know, dedicated hosts or bring your own license, you're going to save, I don't know, 30%, for example, in the overall maintenance cost. So the OLA is really our key door opener for every migration opportunity, whatever they contain, because we know that in the end, most of the customers use Windows Server or SQL Server. They have them in their environments anyway, but it could be applicable to other things like Oracle or SAP, for example. But this is the starting point for all the things about Microsoft migrations to AWS. Now, after the OLA, and I know my colleague and Claudio will also talk about this, but after we do the OLA, we start the migration piece. So that's what we call it, the mobilize phase of the MAP program. Now, we do the migration and we start migrating different workloads depending on what we identified before during the assessment phase. And then we can optimize, but also there is an opportunity to upsell. So after we finish the migration of the Microsoft workloads, we can say, you know what, customer, you can do something more. You can decide to get away from the cost of the enterprise agreements that you have with Microsoft by using our services on AWS, because you already migrated your Microsoft workloads to AWS. And you can also use open source, like, for example, you can move from Windows to Linux, or from SQL to Aurora or Postgres, for example, or modernize your legacy .NET applications to .NET Core on AWS. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a Visual Studio Toolkit that will be able to, for the developers, to continue to develop their applications on Visual Studio, but hosted on AWS. So it's an additional upselling opportunity that we usually include in our customer journey. Now, briefly about the OLA. I mentioned it earlier, but my colleagues today are going to dive deep a little bit on the OLA. So, but just to give you an idea, we have, if we do an OLA, we have more than 50% of a success rate, but also 33% more faster migrations. And we're going to have 60 on average. These are EMEA numbers. So these are real data that we collected for the OLA. So 62% average compute cost savings versus the on-premise. And there is no cost for the customer, because in the end, you can say, okay, I'm going to be a partner referral for OLA. I'm going to do an OLA marketing campaign. I'm going to start collecting leads, and I'm going to talk with Tech Data to say, okay, let's do this OLA together. Or you can say, I'm a partner-led OLA, so I'm able to do a cloud assessment using, I don't know, Migration Evaluator, Cloudamize, or any other tools that you may be familiar with, but I cannot do the review of the Microsoft licensing of our customers. So I'm gonna ask TD SYNNEX to do it for me. So, but in the end, generally speaking, I would say start with an OLA, start talking with TD SYNNEX about this. They know how to do this. We back them up as well. So we have people in our organization that can help them deliver OLAs, and make sure that you inform TD SYNNEX about OLA opportunities, because then TD SYNNEX can open these OLA opportunities into the APN portal, and then we can request funding for you, basically. So this is basically the model. We also have a couple of OLA delivery partners that can help in this journey. So aside from TD SYNNEX, we also have a couple of partners that can help us in doing the Microsoft license, just the Microsoft licensing piece, because we know it's complicated. So cloud assessment is fine when you use the Migration Evaluator, of course, which is owned by AWS, so you have unlimited license to use it. You can look at the, I don't know, the networking, the CPU, the server goals, everything that is happening in a customer environment. But you're missing the Microsoft licensing piece. And that's really important, because when we present the outcome to the customer, we need to make sure that they know what they're going to save in terms of Microsoft licensing as well. Now, I'm going to skip the funding part, but we also have a lot of resources available in the APN portal aside from the TD SYNNEX Academy portal, where you can find additional resources about that. But I just wanted to briefly talk about the Windows EC2 service delivery, which is something that you can aim to. So the more you ask TD SYNNEX to create OLA opportunities for you on behalf of you. So when you have OLA or Windows migration opportunity, please make sure that TD SYNNEX open those opportunities for you. And then you will have some use cases that you can use to get the Windows EC2 service delivery. What is it? The Windows EC2 service delivery is the way to have access to a lot of funding which we give availability to our partners that get it. So we can help you with that, and TD SYNNEX can help you with that as well. And lastly, I just want to tell you that we have playbooks, and there are links here. We can share the deck afterwards for OLA, for Microsoft workloads, and for VMware workloads as well. So make sure that you click on these links when we provide you this this deck, and then a small call to action. Just talk with TD SYNNEX about an OLA marketing campaign, for example. I saw it when I was managing partners directly in EMEA. I saw it was very, very effective. It was the best way to open. It was the best way to create new leads starting from an OLA marketing campaign. So try to look at your customer base as well to see if you can propose an OLA, and make sure that you inform TD SYNNEX about the opportunity ID, or inform TD SYNNEX so they can open the opportunity for you, and they can use the funding that is available for them and for you as well. So I'm going to hand it over to whoever is next. And thank you very much. If you have questions, I will answer online, or we can just collect all the questions and answer offline by email.
Thank you. It's Yari next, and he's now got the presenter option. The scene is yours, Yari.
Yep. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Nice. So yeah, I'm taking over from Ale, and next 10 to 15 minutes, we started a little bit late. Are we gonna speak about technicalities of OLA, like what is inside, and I will try to sort of debunk or like explain how we do this, how we get those like wonderful savings, and we'll try to show it like from inside out. First of all, we need to understand that you might see this slide before, but it might look busy at first, but it's actually quite simple. So what we call like 7 R's, and there are multiple strategies how you can move applications to the cloud. And it all starts with the sort of a deadlines for us, like, retain, which is, there might be some like industry specific, like tied to, I don't know, to the factory application, which is like really latency critical. You can't really move it, so it stays, for example, on-prem. Then customers can decide to retire and decommission their applications. This is the second R. Then we can do a relocate, which is especially invented for VMware move, which is like, I would say, the easiest way how to move is just like port all the VMware based machines to the cloud. Then it's, I would say, more like a mass approach for the industry, which is rehosting, literally also similar to VMware, but of course it's from different platforms. Like on-prem, it could be physical, could be VMware, could be Hyper-V, and so on and so forth. And you move it literally to the instances, to virtual machines in the cloud. Replatforming, it's sort of a lift and reshape. It's a little bit more, for example, if during the move you upgrade the operating system, although it's not really that easy. You know, it's you need to do this with some manual stuff, and things like, for example, updating SQL Server, when you just you know, spin up a new machine in the cloud, a newer version of SQL, and just move the data, you know, the databases on top of the new version of SQL. Repurchasing, this is more like for the replacing application with SaaS alternatives. Yeah, like, you know, SharePoint on-prem and the SharePoint online, although the later one has some limitations, but anyway. And the most difficult, but more, I would say, the most promising in terms of cost saving, I think, is refactoring, where like custom application, you know, absolutely rewritten with the modern cloud approach, for example, with serverless, with you know, from monolith to you know, micro service approach, and that's where the savings could be literally even like, you know, 2 times, 3 times, and so on and so forth. So this is the migration strategies we normally see in practice, and OLA is actually targeting more like a rehosting. This piece here, like the easiest one, and the I would say still beneficial. And a lot of customers, they prefer to do like a gradual approach. First of all, they want to move to the cloud more like as is, and then they want to reinvent and, you know, do more advanced scenarios with replatforming or refactoring, for example. And speaking of OLA, we first of all, let me start with the fact that a lot of enterprises on-prem, they use oversized resources. Literally, like as it has always been on-prem, it's like when the department or like a certain business unit gets the, you know, requirements for a certain IT system, of course they oversize, because they don't really know how they're gonna, you know, be where they're gonna be in like in multiple years. So they wanna like aim, when they do sizing for the infrastructure, they want to aim like to the highest. And a lot of customers, they have literally not that much utilization. We've seen the cases where on-prem systems were utilized, like average number was like 10% CPU and like 30% memory. And of course, in the cloud, you need to you know, size it as to the actual workload as much as possible, right? Because you can you know, scale up or scale down literally in minutes, instead of, if we compare this with the on-prem, it would take in many cases months, you know, to order new hardware, to install it, to do all the wiring, and so on and so forth. So what we do with OLA, we literally measure all those on-prem systems, and based on that, we form the sizing, and as a result of the OLA, we provide the list. You know, like when I say we, it's actually collectively, right, with our partners, and OLA is actually, yeah, it can be delivered in multiple ways. But of course, we use tools for that, you know, to collect this data, this performance data, and to do like automated sizing. And there are a few tools which can be used, although the tool in the middle, it's more for like a process of engagement. So it's just to illustrate that a lot of tools are here. They have a different discovery scope. You know, some of those do more discovery on SQL, some do less, and so on and so forth. First tool, the first row here is, as you can see, owned by us. It's ex-TSL Logic company, and now we have a product called AWS Migration Emulator, which is like our in-house product. And we, of course, you know, in OLAs, we give access to this product for free. It has its own pros and cons. So it develops quite quickly, and yeah. Modernize IT, again, this is more for our like services department. They like it, and unfortunately, we don't really fund this in OLA process. But Cloudamize, the last row here, is the tool where we actually do funding. Let's discuss two major vehicles, two major tools for OLA. So AWS Migration Later, it's actually agentless. So like it's built from scratch to work without agents. So it uses to collect the performance data. It uses native protocols for Windows or Linux. Although like 99% of the time it's actually only Windows. It's much easier for a migration elevator. So it just uses the WMI Windows management instrumentation calls and just collects all those performance metrics you might see like when you open the task manager or like perf monitor. It's fully supported by us, it's fully integrated in OLA process, and the advantages which, for example, CloudMIS cannot offer is one of the things, for example, is we also offer what we call flat file ingestion. For example, if customer is really like picky about security, they don't really want to install any tool, but of course we need to do some calculations, to do some at least rough data to calculate. We can ask them to fill out the Excel file with the columns like tell us average CPU utilization, tell us the average storage utilization, memory, and stuff like that. So they can use the existing monitoring system to fill it out and provide this to us, with the accuracy as much as possible, of course. And based on that, with AWS Migration Later, we can calculate the target instances, and we can calculate the total cost of ownership based on that. From the other side, CloudMIS, for example, they do not have this ability, but they one of the biggest features of CloudMIS is that they accurately measure storage performance. For example, those IOs and throughput, which is quite important especially for the a big SQL servers and enterprise database servers. Unfortunately, right now with AWS Migration Later, we cannot do this, although it again evolves quite quickly because there was additional row in drawbacks just a few months ago about not able to do the network mapping between the applications, because again sometimes you need to first of all, you need to migrate applications at once. You don't really want to be in a situation when you migrate a database first in the cloud with this sort of lift and shift approach, and then next Monday your application servers are still on-prem and database in the cloud. Of course, this latency will in many cases it will drastically decrease the performance, and the impact can in most of the times it's going to be significant. So this functionality to actually discover all applications which are communicate to each other, so those application discovery, as we call it, it actually appeared in AWS Migration Later quite recently, because team is actually doing innovation work and they introduce new features quite quickly. CloudMIS also has this feature. It actually quite good in terms of SQL discovery. For AWS Migration Later, we use a special T script which collects the more details. CloudMIS can do it natively. Drawbacks is again we fund the CloudMIS tool, but again it's only for 60 days, and from my practice sometimes customers actually sleep over this 60 days and they need more. Of course, there are some exceptions. We can ask CloudMIS to extend this, but it's case by case, and generally, the timeline for OLA should be more tight if you choose to use CloudMIS. And of course, with Migration Later, we don't really have such a restriction. It's our tool, and the timeline can be longer. Let's just dive a little bit deeper into what we do and how we can do this. So this actually true for CloudMIS too. It's just optimization options. So we discover everything. We discover the CPU utilization and provide the ways how to optimize this. For example, to port the existing instance on-prem to the smaller instance in the cloud and pay less money for this. We also assess the bring your own license strategy, and as Ale mentioned, we can involve for free the licensing partners who have actually like, the power to do legal recommendation on the licenses. Of course, we do know how licenses work, but they do this in a production manner with like a real recommendation, which are backed up by some obligations. And it's this process continues because we also can offer some again, we together can offer the some optimizations, like for example SQL downgrades when customers sometimes use Enterprise Edition just for clustering, but they might not be aware that this clustering in the form of 2 nodes is actually available in the standard edition. If the only enterprise feature they want to use is high availability with the 2-node cluster, we can actually downgrade it to standard and save a lot of money for the customer. And yeah, we of course can identify Windows operating system which are at the end of life. How process looks like. So for migration related, we install normally it's a virtual machine. We install the collector in the customer data center, and this collector can be hooked up to the multiple sources. For example, VMware vCenter or like Hyper-V. It can look into Active Directory, or if it's like a Linux machines, it can use SNMP to collect the data. And of course, T-SQL script, which I mentioned before, which can help us to gather more detailed information on the Microsoft SQL instances. So a collector actually collects, of course, the performance information and puts this in local MongoDB, and that it regularly pushes the data to the Amazon S3 bucket, which is fully secure, and only a migration relator team has access to it. And again, this data is only contains only like server names and the performance data. There is no personal information like other stuff. And if customers don't really want to do this, or like there is no internet access, of course, this ingestion can happen manually, because you can literally ask a customer to just click a couple of buttons on the collector and extract literally the I think it's CVS file or Excel, doesn't matter, but just extract Excel file and upload to the special portal we have. So like, if they don't really want, if they are not happy with this like automatic approach, this approach can be manual, and they can actually see what file they are like shipping. And again, it's only performance data. Recent introduction of the network visualization. So it's migration relator now relies on AWS Migration Hub to actually visualize all dependencies on the application. So for example, again, it's only useful in the cases where customers don't really have that much of a documentation for applications. Sometimes it happens, and you literally start from like a black box and try to figure out like how many servers application B actually uses, and like how can we group them to migrate this in one batch. So this feature is now available. Yeah, so it's our native tool. It evolves a lot. In literally last year, it was integrated with a lot of things. For example, MGN integration. It also integrates with other tools, and the process is going quite fast. And let's talk a couple of words about Cloudomize. Cloudomize, again, it's an external company, but it's also our good partner. They provide a tool which is quite good for example, SQL discovery. It uses agents for this deep discovery. So like if you want to utilize like Cloudomize at fullest, with this complex SQL discovery and stuff, of course, you need to use agents for that. They also provide this mapping, and it actually quite seamless. This mapping can generate migration plan for you. It identifies automatically without any like manual T-SQL scripts. Identifies automatically SQL license editions, as I mentioned, and it integrates with our lift and shift tools like Cloud and Do, or now it's called like MGN, or Application Migration Service. And with that, I will pass the mic to the next presenter, and yeah, I will be available for Q&A at the end if we're going to do one. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. In this session, I will explain practically why TD SYNNEX is here and what type of support we can provide to our partners, specifically on the optimization licensing assessment. First of all, a brief introduction of how TD SYNNEX is organized. We have cloud solution architect in country, in your case, Fawad, that can help you in any request for AWS. They are your first point of contact. Obviously, AWS has hundreds of services. No one can be expert of everything. The experience on the AWS services is different. So when something can be covered directly by the solution architect in country, it can escalate to our center of excellence. That is the team that I'm leading. The center of excellence is a team of a central team in Europe of skilled cloud solution architect with certifications and a lot of experience in different topics, security, databases, containerization, networking, and so on. And we help the partner that are in the country to address complex problem, complex project and design. In this case, we help them with the optimization licensing assessment that was described by our AWS colleagues. And we have a proposition that is structured with different level of details. First of all, we have the standard proposition that is a standard assessment that is mainly based on the migration evaluator tool. We help you install and configure the tool, support the data collection of the tool. When the tool has completed its collection, we go through the outcomes of the tool. We create a document for you with all the detail of what was discovered about the licensing. And once the document is ready, we have a remote workshop with you, presenting the outcome, commenting what was discovered by the tool, what is an opportunity in terms of Microsoft licensing optimization based on the outcome of the tool. This is our basic standard proposal for the assessment. If you want to go deeper, we have an optional add-on to the standard assessment because, as was described by our AWS colleagues, migration evaluator can cover a lot, but not everything. And in this case, we have an optional add-on that is the inventory deep dive. In this case, on top of the analysis that was done by the migration evaluator, we go through the inventory of your Microsoft licensing that you can provide to us, because as you know, there are different Microsoft products with different features, with different expiration date, because maybe one license is near to its expiration date, another license are still some months or even a year before the expiration date. We have to consider that we have in a migration phase, so there will be a transient period where something will be on-premise and something else will be in the cloud. So we go through the inventory of your existing Microsoft licensing. We identify the correct strategy to address also what is existing, to leverage it as much as possible, but at the same time to define the strategy to move to the new infrastructure in the cloud. As for the standard assessment, we prepare a document with all the detail of our analysis, the suggestion, and the pros and cons of the different choices. We have a workshop with you presenting and discussing the outcome, because maybe something is related to your business activity, your future project. So it makes sense to check that what was discovered and presented is in line, not only from the technical point of view, but also from the business point of view with you. The deliverable will be the documentation, so the report of the analysis, and the presentation and the feedback, the interaction with you. Then there is a third option that is related to a specific workload. You want to focus on a specific workload to do a deep dive analysis on that workload, because what we saw is that sometimes the licensing issue is not only related to technical stuff, but is to business stuff, because you have to renew the license, you have to pay the fee and so on, but is also related to technical stuff, for example, application and performance requirement. For example, in some cases, you choose a specific server with a specific number of virtual CPUs, because it was the only option to address another requirement related to, for example, to storage IOPS, storage performances, and so on. With this third proposition, workload deep dive, we do a specific deep dive on that specific your workload that you are interested to evaluate. We check the application and performance requirement to see if in the AWS cloud you can have alternative option to address those requirements. For example, in the case that I was describing before, in AWS, you have plenty of storage option, provisioned IOPS, SSD, throughput optimize, cold storage to address the same requirements. So we do the analysis for the application with a focus on the application and performance needs of your workload. We analyze, obviously, the license inventory that you have to understand how to leverage as much as possible what is your existing scenario. We analyze everything and we create a documentation that is a reference for you. As in the previous case, we schedule a workshop with you to present the analysis that we did, the outcomes that we identified, to check that everything is aligned between the business and the technical requirement. And we give you the deliverable, the documentation, and the presentation. So we are trying to be very practical in helping you in all these three propositions. Starting from the basic one, you just want a quick analysis of the optimization that can be done, working more on the right sizing than on other stuff. Then we can pass as an add-on to analyzing your inventory of Microsoft licensing to customize the proposition and managing also the transient period from the on-prem to the full migration to the cloud. And then we can also focus on specific workload to do a very deep dive analysis on that specific case, probably also proposing a minimum of replatforming of your solution to obtain the same application and performance requirement with a saving on the Microsoft licensing. So this is what TD SYNNEX can do practically to help our partner. Obviously, we can collaborate. Maybe something can be done by you as a partner because you have the experience and the knowledge to do that. Something else can be done by TD SYNNEX. We can work together to offer you the best support to win the project of the migration and help you be your end customer happy. Thank you. I'm here if you have questions, doubts on the type of support that TD SYNNEX can offer you. If not, I leave the stage to Dwayne for the final session.
Thanks, Claudio. So I'm conscious of time, but hopefully you'll be able to see my screen in a sec. So basically, what we want to talk through, obviously there's lots of benefits to actually delivering these migration opportunities, and obviously the stuff specifically around Microsoft and Windows that the team have discussed today. However, if you or your partner want to learn more, in the chat, I've just shared a link in the chat to this site, our new landing page, around migration benefits. And really, this goes into a bit more detail around our platform, the training and services available, and the actual map piece as well. And if you're a partner on the call today, there's a link here to book a one-to-one consultation with the team here to discuss any migration opportunities or skills you're looking to develop further. What we've also built as well, and again, something that'll be useful, is a very an ebook that again we'll share the link with afterwards as well. Let's put it in the chat as well. And this ebook will help again give a good overview around our migration piece. And if we look at you know, there's some good stuff, some information around why migrating to cloud AWS, but if we look at the map program in and of itself, it gives you a good overview of how MAP works, the different steps we have. So there's the assessment phase that again TD SYNNEX have the architects in place that can help you build out your assessment phase. Then the second step is where also we get into the mobilize, and again we can support there, or we have the parties that can support you with that mobilize phase, and then the actual migration piece itself. And obviously at each stage there's benefits, both cash benefits and credits available to both the partner and the end customer to deliver those assess, migrate and mobilize stages. And again, this ebook again will help you look at some different pieces around MAP itself, the stuff like we've spoken about as well, like well architected, etc. as well, and our solutions and services. So as a quick call to action would be today to download these links, have a look through the content, and as we said, if there's anything that specifically you want to go into more detail on after the presentations from the team today, book that one-to-one consultation with the TD SYNNEX people that are here on the call today, and we'll be able to help you with any specific opportunity or enablement that you're looking for either yourselves or for your end customer. But that's it for me. As I said, I'm conscious of time today, so these are the links, and I said any questions, give us a shout. But I think that gives us a few minutes now for Q&A, Antti and Hans.
Thank you, Dwayne. Yeah, we will send the recording afterwards. We will also save the recording on the landing page, which are having toward the AWS Tech Wednesdays. So you will have it on that side also. And we are happy to set up a call with our partners in the Nordics to go further into details when you're ready. So with that, thank you to all. I will stop the recording, and looking forward to see you in our next webinar, the 14th of December.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.